Hey everyone, it's New Year's Eve today, and I know a lot of people, they were posting videos or chatting about New Year's resolutions for the upcoming year and talking about New Year's resolutions they're going to do for 2019. I'm going to do something a little bit different. I decided I was going to talk about New Year's resolution that my husband and I had for 2018. And I'm kind of excited about it because we did our New Year's resolution. It actually worked this year. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about it because I think it's a great New Year's resolution and something that I recommend you doing for 2019. So my husband is a truck driver and he works over 50 hours a week. He's gone a lot. And we have 4 children in our home. So it's busy. It's busy for us. And one of the things we realized is that we were not reading anymore. And the Bible actually says in the book of Proverbs that we are supposed to be always studying, always learning, always reading, always wanting to have more knowledge and more wisdom. So we decided for this year that we are going to put a big effort in to read more. So I'm going to show you the books that we read, that my husband and I read, and talk a little bit about each one in case it's one that you're interested in, and also just talk about the different kinds of books that you can be reading, and it's just a few pointers if you are really busy and it's hard to read. So I'm going to go through my husband's books first. So remember, this is somebody who works around 50 hours a week truck driving, so it's not like he's reading while he works. So this is the first book that he read, and it's Your Best Year Ever. And I did a skim read of this because it was really good, but I also listened to, this is by Michael Hyatt. I also listened to his podcast, so a lot of the stuff in this book is also in his podcast, but it is really good. So if you are wanting to start your year off right, I would recommend starting with this book, Your Best Year Ever by Michael Hyatt, and it's very good, and it's my husband's first book of this year. And then he did Stock Market Investing for Beginners, in which he learned that we're not at a place right now to do stock marketing. But maybe in the future, but right now we're not. Okay, then he read Mere Christianity, which is a book we've actually had in our library since before we were married. And we're coming up on our 17-year anniversary. So we've had this book for a long time. I read it in college. So this is actually going on my pile of books to read for this year, but he really, really loved this. And you would think C.S. Lewis, it's a long time ago, that it wouldn't really have anything to do with today, but actually this is so relevant for today. Like if you're looking for a book and you really want to dive into the depths of Christianity and what it means in our present day, C.S. Lewis, Mere Christianity, fantastic book. All right, then we have Narnia, which this is actually a book we got on our first year anniversary. One of our dates that we love to do is go to Chapters and get like a Starbucks coffee and then walk around and find books. And so we got this, and he had read through all of it except for the last one. And then, so this year he didn't read this whole thing. He read the last book in the series because he had never read that book. And that's the best one. I love that book. I love the last one so, so much. All right, the next book he read was In 6 Days. And this is a book also that's been in our library for a long time because we bought this book when we were in college together. And both of us had read parts of it because we had used it for research for projects we were doing in school, but he actually read all the way through it. And each chapter is written by a different scientist coming from a different point of view. They're all very well respected scientists in their field, and they all explain why creation happened in 6 days. So this is a science book, and some chapters are really easy to read and some chapters are harder to read. Okay, the next book he read The Invisible Man. Now this looks like super thin, but I don't know if you can see here. It's like really, really small lettering. But these books are really cheap to buy at Chapters. They're like $5 or $6, and you can get the classics, but they put them in really, really thin print so they can squish them low. So I actually don't know if I'd recommend getting this one if you're like, I don't know, I like bigger print. I find the little print too hard to read. But The Invisible Man by H.G. Wells. And the book that both of us are going to be doing in the new year that we've decided is 1984 because I kind of think we're living in that world right now too. Okay, the next book that he did, this is actually 3 books here by Max Lucado, or Lucado, however you pronounce it. The Applause of Heaven, When God Whispers Your Name, and The Grip of Grace. And he's actually just finishing that. He's in the end of The Grip of Grace right now. This book was also in our library already. I read these books in college, and these are good books if you don't want like deep theology, like you just want to just read something about God and have a nice meditation. You don't want to like really think deep, but sometimes we need that, right? We just need just something light because we just need to feel God close to us. Okay. This book, Suicide of the West by Jonah Goldberg. My husband just finished this yesterday, and he didn't tell me that this was his favorite book that he read this year, but he talked to me about this book more than all the other books. And this is the book that I'm going to start tomorrow, New Year's Day. This is going to be my first book of the year. So this is going to go in this pile over here for myself for later. Okay, so those are my husband's books that he did this year. So now I'm going to talk to you about the books that I did. So first I'm going to tell you that I do a lot of driving because I have 4 children who none of them can drive yet, but they're all old enough that they have very active social lives. So I need to drive them lots of places. And also they do sports, and so sometimes I have to drive pretty far distance for different events. So I actually got a bunch of books on tape, and that is my first little hint for you, is that if you are really busy, but you do want to read more, you can do books on tape. So I'm going to tell you the books on tape I did. I did Killing England. This is amazing. This is The War of Independence, and it's by Bill O'Reilly, and it's very, very good. This one is also by Bill O'Reilly, and it's Legends and Lies, and this is the Civil War. There are some parts here that are really dramatic, like it's, whoa. Okay, but this is really, really good also, and a lot of things I didn't know, and actually a lot of things about Abraham Lincoln I didn't know. I have to say, if Abraham Lincoln lived today and said some of the things he said when he was alive, yeah, but he was still a great man, but definitely some things about him I did not know. Okay, this book was kind of life-changing for me. This says Thomas Jefferson and the Tripoli Pirates. And it talks a lot about slavery and a lot of things about slavery I did not know. Like how there was a lot of white people were slaves in Libya and were treated very horribly as well. As slavery actually went 2 ways. And I never in my entire life ever heard about Libya and about the slave trade in Libya and how many white people were held as slaves in Libya and taken from America to Libya, held as slaves. But this is all about pirates and what pirates actually were, and I actually ended up listening to this twice because it was crazy. Now I'm going to tell you that Brian Kilmeade, who wrote this, he's a very good writer, but he probably should have somebody else read his books because I felt like he was yelling at me the entire time. I kind of do the same thing when I do my videos, so I probably shouldn't say anything about that, but I did feel like he yelled the book at me. Okay, and then I did this one, Killing the Rising Sun. Wow. So this is about World War II, except it's not about Germany, it's about Japan. I had no idea how evil Japan was, and it also talks about dropping the bombs that they dropped to end the war. And did you know that there's 3? There's supposed to be a 3rd one. Yeah, so you need to read about that. And there's this one part where it almost goes off in the sky. Like, it's crazy. So read that. This one I did, Pilgrim's Progress. It's one of my favorite books. And I did this audio as well. Focus on the Family does that, and they do a pretty good job. Okay. Now, the books I read that were not on tape, Platform by Michael Hyatt, who's the same person who did the book my husband read. This is the first book I read this year, and I put a lot of this into practice because I was starting my podcast and my website, and I'm going to be going through this book again because I did some of the things in it. Now I'm going to try to do more things in it. Okay, Reading People, which this is a book that was kind of like about what you like, what's your style. And I found out I'm an introvert, which I didn't know, but I am. But you can be an introvert who likes to be around people, which just makes you frustrated all the time, which is me. I'm an introvert, but I love being around people, but I'm an introvert. So it's just kind of frustrating. Okay, this book I'd read before, but I reread it. You see here, All the Way Home, by Bruce Snavely, who is an amazing man, someone I've known my whole life. And this is his life story about growing up in foster care. And this, you have to read this book. And if anybody wants to borrow this, I might lend it to you, but it's a very important copy to me because it's autographed by the author. Okay. This one, Why I Hate Green Beans. Hilarious book. So funny. And it's just this woman's journey through her professional life. And she's so funny. And she writes for like people who watch The Bachelor. Like she's a big Bachelor person and she writes for them. I thought, I don't watch The Bachelor. That's not my thing. I'm going to hate this book. But actually I loved it. Okay, some other books that I read that I don't have here because I lent them out to people. Love Like You've Never Been Hurt. God sent that book to me at the exact time. Actually read that over a weekend that ended up being a really, really hard weekend for our family. So I was really thankful that God sent that book to me just at the right time. So if you've been hurt by your family, it's a lot about like parents and parenting, and then struggling if there's things in your family that are hurting you and you feel like you can't give out love. Sex and the Conversation the Church Forgot. Also a great book for parents to read. Kind of shocking, some of the things you're going to find out in there about pornography today on the world and how young children are getting into it, and then how to deal with your children, trying to keep them from that, but also once they have gotten into that, how to talk them through that. Also, another book I got that I lent out is It's Okay Not to Be Okay, which is a fantastic book. Really enjoyed that book as well. That was one of the books read near the end of the year. And just a reminder that, we can be vulnerable about the things that we're struggling with, and it's okay. We don't have to be perfect. Okay, Fake or Follower. I hate this book. So it's by Andy Andrew, and she sent me another book to read. So I might read one of her other books because I did really, really like all of this book except for one chapter. There was one chapter where it got into like social justice warrior things, and it kind of came across to me like if you're not a big Black Lives Matter person, then you aren't a true follower of Jesus. And like I kind of think you can be on either side of that and be a follower of Jesus. So I didn't really like that one chapter, but the rest of the chapter was good. Okay, Strategic Compassion. Awesome book. Actually, now that I think about it, I was going to lend this out to some pastors that I know. But anyway, pastors need to read this book because this talks about, yes, we need to as a church be reaching out into our community. But the point isn't just to reach out into our community and make like good PR for our churches. The point is that we are supposed to be reaching people with the good news of Jesus Christ, right? So there needs to be strategic compassion. We are actually giving them Jesus, not just giving them clothes and food. And this is the guy who works for Compassion, Barry Slonwhite, and I interviewed him on my podcast. If you want to go back and listen to the podcast, that was probably one of my most popular podcasts that I did this year. Okay, the last book that I read is this one, Jerusalem's Queen. I just finished it yesterday. I just wrote a review for it up on my website. And when I first got this book, I was like, it's fiction. And like my husband was telling me we need to do some fiction as well. And I was like, okay, I guess I'll do it. Wow. And it turns out it's fiction, but it's historical fiction. So it's based on a real person. Did you know that Israel had a queen? And I mean, other than the really bad one that we all know about in the Book of Kings. But her name was Salome Alexandria. And she was amazing. Like probably one of the greatest rulers Judah has ever had, because this takes place in between the Old and New Testament. So they were Judah because, read the Bible. Israel and Judah become two separate kingdoms. Israel is scattered everywhere. Judah is taken to Babylon and then is able to return. So this takes place in Judah. And what I got from this book, one, she's now my new favorite historical figure, and I want to know everything about her. So I've been Googling her like crazy and trying to find out everything I can about this person. But she lived, I don't want to give it away, but well, a lot of evil things were happening around her, and her only goal in life was to please God. And she calls him Hashem. So if you're reading it, you're like, who's Hashem? Hashem means the name, because she won't even say God's name because it's so holy. But her only goal is to please God. And God lifts her up, and she becomes the most powerful person in Judah. Amazing. Like, read through this whole thing in 24 hours. It was such a good book. Okay, so here's the books I'm going to be reading this year. So this one, I already told you, Suicide of the West, starting that January 1st. This one, Made for the Journey, I'm going to be working on, and there'll be a review coming up on this one really soon. This is Elizabeth Elliot's journal, just the first part of their trip. And Elizabeth Elliot, I did a podcast on the Elliots, so you can go back and read about this. So I've always wanted to read this, so I'm really excited to read this. This book I've been started, and I'm going to go through this whole thing really soon. And it's Yeshu, the Life of the Messiah from a Messianic Jewish perspective. So it's a theology book on prophecy. And somebody actually sent this to me. And I am very excited. They mailed this to me as just a surprise gift. And so I'm really, really excited. I've started it, but I've had other books I was reading. So now I'm getting close to being able to just dive right into that. Okay, so those are the books that we read. So why should you read this year? Honestly, Alex and I, my husband and I, were sitting down and talking about this yesterday, and how much we've just changed and grown as people over this year just by reading. And God does tell us that we're supposed to be seeking after knowledge and wisdom, and it does change you. And it's a muscle, right? So if you just sit around and you're lazy, you don't use your muscles, you just get fat and gross, and you need to be working out your muscles, right? Well, your brain is also a muscle, and we need to be thinking and stretching ourselves and reading and learning, and that will help us to keep developing and growing. So this year, my recommendation to you for 2019 is to read more as much as possible. And even if you need to start with some audiobooks to get you started, go ahead, start with some audiobooks. And you can start off with some easier books, but don't just think easy, like dive into some harder books. And my husband would say a book he would recommend for sure is this book, Suicide of the West, that we should be reading this because we might just be giving our society away right now, and that's not a good thing. All right, I'm Laura Lee Stevens. That was one of my New Year's resolutions from last year. That was successful. So I hope that your New Year's resolutions this year will be successful. All right, I'm Laura Lee Stevens. Happy New Year, and I hope you have a great 2019.